Thank you for that. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Margie. Let me ask you, what do you hear, or what do you think of when you hear the word creativity? I bet you think, happy thoughts, or, that it's a light kind of a word. Because really, when you think of the word creativity, it's really hard to think of like gloom, doom, despair. I've never heard anyone that reacted that way. But you might also think that creativity is really not that important. I mean, I based this talk, the title of this talk, on the movie Everywhere, Everything, Everywhere, and All at Once. I called it Every Day, Every Way, and not just Stunts. And that's because in the movie, they talk about that life is really about laundry and taxes. So you don't think of, creativity being involved too much with laundry or taxes. That's pretty practical stuff. But let's ask the question: what is creativity? I could have the first slide up there, Jeremy. That'd be great. There's many definitions. If I handed out postcards to you all right now, you could come up with your own definition, and they would all be valid. But researchers have pretty much determined that creativity is novelty that is useful. And it's very important, that second part, because I could show you lots of examples of novelty that are not at all useful. Talk to me afterwards and I could tell you some of those. But now we also talk about who is creative. The next slide would be great. We think of artists as being creative. I mean, these are the people that get all the press, right? The dancers, the singers, the writers, the visual artists, the sculptors, all these people, they get the press. But really, artists don't make up a very large part of people that are creative. And the next slide. We also think of people that are scientists, inventors, of course, and engineers. But the truth is that, the next slide, yeah, everyone is creative. And I know you'll think, what do you mean by that? And I'll explain why. We say, the researchers, that everyone is creative because everyone solves problems. We all do that every single day. And that's what I want to focus on. The next slide, please. I am really interested in a particular kind of creativity, and this is a real thing. It's called everyday creativity. And what that is, yes, it's novelty that is useful, so we have the original title, but that it's personally meaningful. So that every day you solve problems that are personally meaningful. Now, they're not going to be earth-shaking. They're not going to change the world. You're probably not going to come up with a new technique in art or anything like that, or a new invention. I mean, you might, but we're focusing here on everyday creativity, like small problems. So I'm going to give you some tools on how to be creative, to give you some ways to help you expand that, because you already are creative. Being born, you're just creative. That's it. No one can teach you creativity any more than anyone can teach you love. But we can give you tools to creativity just like we can help you remove barriers to love. And the first tool, if you give me that one, please, Jeremy, is the tolerance of ambiguity. And what that means is that you don't know the answer. And you may be uncomfortable with not knowing the answer because, we want to know things right away. But you can accept that you don't know the answer. One of the best examples I can think of is like when you watch a detective show, and it's an hour detective show, and somebody's been murdered, and the cops land on one particular person. Well, we've seen these things so many times. We know that the first person they decide is the murderer is never the person that did it. And that's kind of how we work when we solve problems. We think that the first answer will be the answer that will solve the problem. Usually not, almost never. So because you need another tool in your toolbox to be creative. And you could show that slide too, please. And that is the tolerance of complexity. Now, sometimes in school, I would get confused and I would call this the tolerance of chaos, because sometimes it can feel like that. Again, like with the tolerance of ambiguity, you have to be willing to except that something is going to be more complex, that the answer may be more complex than you originally thought. Okay? And there's one more tool that I'm going to act out a little bit and show you, because you do this tool, you use this tool all the time. And you actually use the other tool, but you use this one more than any other one. And I'm going to show you a little bit and see if you can guess what it is. And what that is incubation. You've heard the term sleep on it. It's a real thing. This has been studied a great deal. But we also do it in these other activities where our bodies are active, but our minds don't have to be too active. You don't have to think much when you're taking a shower. If you're going down a freeway and there's nothing in front of you and that kind of thing, you will come up with ideas. Steven Spielberg says he comes up with some of his best ideas when he's stuck in LA traffic. So I think we can follow Steven on that. Also, washing dishes, doing anything, vacuuming, doing anything that your body's active but your mind isn't, is when you will come up with ideas or you'll come up with a solution for a problem. And so that's why I wanted to say that you guys are already using this. But let me also go into how you practice creativity. Well, this is real simple, and you may not like it, but it is the only way. There's no app for creativity. It's trial and error. You simply try things and you make mistakes. But I think that most people think of trial and error more like trial and terror, because we all have this fear of making mistakes, right? So one of my professors wrote a book just last year, and he called it Trial and Learn. Now, I'd like that to rhyme more, and I've tried to figure out other ways. It's actually a really good idea. And scientists know this already. Scientists will put together an experiment, and no matter what the results of the experiment, if it turns out the way they hope, great. If it doesn't turn out the way they hope, they still get information from that, and that gives them information for the next stage of the experiment. And that's the way we need to look at creativity and trial and learn, is that whatever you do, you've learned something about what doesn't work or what does work. And you know Edison's quote on that, the 10,000 ways not to do a light bulb. So he actually knew this answer long before we codified it into this terminology of trial and error, trial and learn. And that's the exact approach that you want to use when you are working on your creativity. Now, I want to give you some examples of everyday creativity, because you might be thinking, well, what would this be? I had a situation years ago where I wanted to line up my hangers in my closet according to color. Okay, just a weird thing, but I wanted to do this, and this is something for me. This was personally meaningful, okay, because I like to hang my clothes on the hanger that matches the color of the clothes. But I couldn't find anything that worked. I tried a couple of things, and nothing worked. And then I was in my craft room one day, and I had these paper holders. And now I had some plastic ones, paper holders, and I looked at it, and I went, that's perfect. Put the hangers in there, and they stay. I did this probably back in 2015, and I'm still using this. So this was a personally meaningful solution for a problem that I had. Okay? Let me give you another one, and this will apply to everybody. We've all had habits we want to adopt, and it's really hard to adopt a new habit, as we know. One of the best ways to do it is to do the habit once, just one time, like if you're trying to exercise. Don't go in and start doing a lot of exercising. Do one squat, one lift, and then celebrate it. Celebrate it by saying, yay for me, or dance around, or do something like that, because that gets into your brain, and you will remember to do it the next time. And then you celebrate the next time and the next time until it gets in your brain to remember to do that particular habit. And then, of course, you add more squats and you add more reaches and that sort of thing. But this works very well. That has a lot of evidence behind it as well. And distracting a 2-year-old You probably don't have a 2-year-old here, but you probably have a 2-year-old, and you might have a 2-year-old grandchild. A great way to distract a sobbing 2-year-old is to say, oh, look, there's a light. And if they don't understand light, they'll look up. And it is almost impossible to cry if you are looking up. And the child will be distracted, and then you can generally move on with your day. Hopefully that'll work. So there's 3 examples of everyday creativity. I'm sure you can think of many, and I hope in the next week that you kind of look and say, what's something that I have a problem and I could come up with creativity? And how could I use tolerance of ambiguity or tolerance of complexity? Or how could I sleep on it or walk on it or wash dishes on it or shower on it so that I come up with the answer that I need? And there's one more thing with creativity, and this is a quality, not a tool, this is a quality, but it's been considered to be the best quality to have for creativity, and that's the last slide, which is curiosity. Gotta have curiosity. I found myself thinking today, I wonder where they got this thing. I wonder who designed this. I wonder where they built this. Is that gonna solve a problem for me right now? Not necessarily, but it could at later time. So keep curiosity going. Thank you very much.